My name is Sofia Ferreira, and I am from Lisbon, Portugal. If you had asked me years ago where my life would take me, I could never have imagined the profound spiritual transformation I was destined to undergo. I was raised in a deeply Catholic family, the kind where Sunday Mass was not optional, where the cross hung on every wall, where my grandmother whispered the rosary every evening before sleep. Faith in my household was not a question. It was simply the air we breathed. Yet despite being surrounded by the rituals of faith, a deep, pervasive sense of emptiness lingered in my heart. I remember sitting in the pew as a young girl, watching the priest raise the chalice, listening to the familiar phrases echoing through the stone church, and feeling nothing. Not rebellion, not doubt, not even boredom. Just a hollow ache, a quiet but persistent voice inside me, whispering that something was missing. I thought it was me. I thought there was something broken inside me that prevented me from feeling what everyone around me seemed to feel so naturally. My mother cried during Mass. My grandmother's face lit up when she spoke of the Virgin Mary. And I sat there, searching within myself for that same warmth, finding only silence. I grew older, and the emptiness grew with me. I studied hard, I excelled in school, I built a life that, from the outside, looked full and complete. I had friends, I had purpose, I had the kind of ambition that carries young women forward through the world. But while all of it provided a temporary solace, none of it touched the hollow space at the center of my chest. I remember walking out of university one afternoon, with my degree freshly in hand, the sunlight blazing over the Tagus River, the city of Lisbon glittering below me, and feeling empty, utterly, inexplicably empty. I had everything I was supposed to want, and I wanted none of it. It was during this restless season of my life that I began to search in earnest. I read philosophy. I read theology. I read the accounts of mystics and saints and scholars who had stood at the edge of the same abyss I was staring into. For a time, I explored the deeper dimensions of Christianity, contemplative prayer, the writings of Teresa of Avila, the Desert Fathers. There were moments of beauty in those texts, genuine flashes of something luminous, but always I returned to the same questions, the same walls. How could God, the infinite, the absolute, the eternal, be divided? How could the creator of the universe, the one who fashioned the endless skies and the deep oceans and the intricate miracle of every living cell, depend on a human form to reach his own creation? These were not questions I spoke aloud. In my family, such questions were close to blasphemy. I kept them locked inside me for years. Then one afternoon in my late 20s, everything changed. I was working in Lisbon at a small international firm, and a new colleague arrived, a young Moroccan woman named Fatima. She was quiet, dignified, composed in a way I had never quite encountered before. She wore the hijab, which at the time I associated with constraint, with submission, with a kind of imposed silence. I remember looking at her and thinking, she must be so restricted. She must be so limited. But over the weeks that followed, as we worked alongside each other, I began to see something in her that dismantled every assumption I had carried. Fatima laughed easily and without self-consciousness. She spoke with precision and confidence. She held her opinions firmly but never unkindly. She was present in every room she entered, fully present, grounded, anchored in something invisible but unmistakably real. I remember walking out of a long, frustrating meeting one evening and watching her stop in the hallway, turn quietly toward the east, and bow her head in prayer, right there, in the corridor, without apology, without embarrassment, without anyone's permission. I stood still and watched her, and something moved in my chest that I could not explain. I must emphasize this. It was not a thought. It was not a decision. It was a tremor. as if something deep inside me had recognized something it had been looking for, without knowing what shape it would take. I approached her afterward and asked simply, "What is that?" She looked at me and smiled, not with the smile of someone eager to convert a stranger, but with the quiet warmth of someone sharing something precious. And she said, "That is prayer. That is my conversation with God." Intrigued by the simplicity of it, the directness of it, I began to ask her questions, careful questions at first, polite, distant. But Fatima answered each one with patience and without pressure, explaining, not insisting. She spoke of Tawheed, the oneness of God, the absolute singularity of the Creator, undivided and undiluted. She spoke of Islam not as a religion of rituals imposed from without, but as a complete way of being. A submission, yes, but a submission chosen freely, joyfully, because once you truly understood to whom you were submitting, there was nothing more natural in the universe. How could the Almighty, the supreme creator of all existence, the one who fashioned the endless skies I love so much, need a son? How could the divine be divided? These were the questions that had lived inside me for decades. And here, for the first time, I was hearing answers that did not collapse under their own weight. She gave me a translation of the Quran. I took it home on a Thursday evening, half skeptical, half desperate. I sat alone at my kitchen table in Lisbon, the city humming below my window, and I opened it. The realization that dawned on me next was not gradual. It was not a slow unfolding of understanding. It was a lightning bolt, a blazing, undeniable light that struck the center of my soul and left nothing in its path unchanged. She had pointed me to Surah Al-Ikhlas first. 4 lines, just 4 lines. Say, "He is Allah, the One. Allah, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is born, nor is there to him any equivalent." I sat there weeping, overwhelmed by a divine presence, and I thought to myself, I don't know the words, but I feel like I understand everything. It was as if a lightning bolt had struck my soul, illuminating every dark corner of doubt I had ever harbored. The questions I had been ashamed to ask, the walls I had spent my life pressing against, in 4 lines they dissolved. Not because I was convinced by argument, but because something in those words resonated with a truth I had always known but never had language to name. I kept reading. Night after night I returned to that table. I read of Ibrahim, who broke the idols and called his people to the one God. I read of Maryam, honored and dignified in Islam in ways that moved me to tears. I read of the Day of Judgment, the mercy of Allah, the descriptions of a Creator who is closer to each of us than our own jugular vein. And with every page, the hollow space inside me, that deep, pervasive emptiness that had defined my life for as long as I could remember, began, slowly, and then all at once, to fill. I began to pray. Imperfectly at first, asking Fatima to show me, watching videos late at night, practicing the Arabic words in my quiet apartment until they felt like my own breath. I began to cover my hair, privately at first, then with increasing ease. Each step was not a loss. It was a shedding of a life that had never truly fit me, and a finding of something that fit me so completely that I could not imagine having lived without it. The day I pronounced the Shahada, I sat in a small mosque in Lisbon, with Fatima beside me and 2 sisters I had only just met as witnesses. The Imam asked me if I was certain. I looked at him and felt, for the first time in my life, completely, utterly, undeniably certain. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. When I spoke those words, I did not feel that I was entering something new. I felt that I had finally arrived somewhere I had always been meant to be. A profound, radiant certainty flooded through me. A certainty so complete, so clean, so unlike anything I had ever experienced that I understood in that moment why it is called the greatest gift. I will not pretend the road since then has been without difficulty.
My family's reaction was what I had feared it would be. My mother wept. My father looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger, but a grief that cut far deeper. My siblings grew distant. The community I had grown up in regarded me with a mixture of pity and incomprehension. They saw a woman who had abandoned her roots, her culture, her identity. But that is not what happened. What happened is that I found my roots, not the roots of a religion inherited without understanding, but the roots of a soul that finally knows its creator. What happened is that I found my identity, not the identity handed to me by geography and tradition, but the identity chosen freely, deliberately, with my whole heart, and with immense gratitude for every difficult moment that led me here. My family still does not fully accept me. That pain is real, and I carry it with great tenderness. I pray for them every single day, not with bitterness, not with the desire to be proven right, but with the sincere hope that Allah will open their hearts as He opened mine, not through argument, not through pressure, through light. Because it is light that changes things, light that moves through the cracks of a searching heart and illuminates everything. I did not lose my family when I found Islam. I found the capacity to love them more deeply, more patiently, and with a compassion I had never known before. Because Islam taught me that every human soul is searching, and that the only response to a searching soul is kindness. My journey was long and sometimes painful, but every moment of doubt was worth it to finally arrive at the truth of Islam. To anyone who is searching, whether you are sitting in a church that no longer speaks to you, or standing at the edge of a philosophy that cannot hold your weight, or simply lying awake in the dark, asking questions no one around you will allow, keep your heart open, listen to the Quran, and never ignore the truth when it stands clearly before you. It stood clearly before me in 4 lines, and it changed everything.